If you are really into your skincare, then if you haven't used Tatcha, then you've at least heard of them. And in the years since they launched, Tatcha has really solidified themselves as a real sought after luxury skincare brand. And for the price points, I think they're luxury, right? Everyone from skincare enthusiasts, skinfluencers, all the way to celebrities use Tatcha and love Tatcha. They're always in like those Harper's Bazaar videos, Vogue Go to Bed with Me. And many people love them because their products are relatively effective, if not really fucking expensive. But despite so many people loving them and really enjoying their products, their rise to its current popular status wasn't without struggle or controversy. Like nearly every single brand out there, there's some things happened. Chapter 1: The early beginnings of Tatcha. So if you don't already know Tatcha, they're basically a luxury beauty brand that draws inspiration from traditional Japanese skincare practices and ingredients, inspiration from like geisha beauty practices. The company was founded back in 2009 by Vicky Desai, but Tatcha's beginnings stretch way back, even further than that, just before Vicky Desai was born. Desai's parents moved from Taiwan to the United States, eventually settling in Houston, Texas. Desai was one of the only Asian students at her school, and that really kind of very quickly made her aware of the unattainable beauty standards in Western society in particular, particularly for an Asian woman whose looks didn't really match those beauty ideals in the US. And as a result, Desai has shared that she struggled with this growing up. She struggled with her identity, she felt underrepresented and isolated as a minority in the early 90s in Texas. And despite appearing to be living this American dream, she graduated from Harvard Business School, married the love of her life who she met at only 20, worked for well-known corporations like Starbucks and Merrill Lynch. She even worked on Wall Street for a period of time, but she still felt almost like disillusioned and tired and not really satisfied with her life. She was burnt out from corporate life. I mean, working on Wall Street, I can't even imagine, with the stresses, the frantic lifestyle that she was living. And this all led to her getting acute dermatitis. I can't stress how much stress can have an impact on your skin. I think people think it's a myth that stress can lead to certain skin conditions, but stress and a lack of sleep can really play havoc on your skin. So she was taking antibiotics. She was on all the usual steroids, like the daily steroids that a dermatologist will have you take when you have acute dermatitis. And this really quite painful condition left her face covered in blisters, rashes, acute dermatitis. So in 2008, pregnant with her first child, decided to travel Asia. This was a chance for her to reset and hopefully find a way to help heal her skin, taking all the stresses away. But I don't think she quite thought this would be the start of a completely new life for her. Her trip around Asia eventually brought her to Kyoto in Japan. And this is where she had a very fortunate meeting with a modern geisha named Kyoka. Now, the beauty secrets of geishas are traditionally kind of kept under wraps. They're quite closely guarded. They're rarely shared with those who are outside of the profession. But Sai was very lucky to meet a geisha who was willing and open to share all these beauty secrets, which have been passed down through generations. We're talking almost 300 years worth of beauty secrets. And she was introduced not just to the timeless ingredients used by geishas for centuries and centuries, but also the rituals involved in those beauty secrets, the beauty routine, their skincare and makeup routines, which are an integral part of their beauty regime. But Sai said that not only had this healed her skin, but the culture, the harmony, the beauty, and the kind of concentration on the importance of your well-being that she had found in Kyoto, it began to heal her spiritually. Sai returned to the US, rejuvenated, revigorated, acute dermatitis free, or on the way to healing. But unfortunately, back in San Francisco, where she was living at the time, she wasn't able to get these beauty products that she had found in Kyoto. The ingredients, the formulations, and she searched everywhere. She went to Japantown, Koreatown, Chinatown. She looked on eBay, but she could not find these products anywhere. The lack of availability of these ingredients and these products that she loved that healed her both spiritually and physically led to the creation of Tatcha. So in late 2008, Desai began studying the natural ingredients that she had learned so much about, along with the timeless rituals that helped transform her skin. So with the help of Japanese skincare scientists, geishas, and cultural advisors from Kyoto to San Francisco, she learned everything that she could about traditional Japanese ingredients and methods when creating Tatcha. Chapter 2: Founding and Growth. After months of research, Tatcha was officially launched in January of 2009, the same day she gave birth to her daughter. She must have been so exhausted. That is a lot. That's a lot to go through. With these traditional Japanese beauty ingredients and methods really being the basis, the core of Tatcha's products. And this was really meant to have an emphasis on simplicity and efficacy as well. The very first product that it launched with, which actually surprised me because I'll be honest, it's kind of a bit like, oh, but back in 2009, it kind of makes sense, was their Abura Turagami Japanese beauty papers, inspired by the oil-absorbing papers used by geishas and made from the same abaca leaf that would traditionally be used. So oil blotting papers, right? It was a popular product from the start and remains popular to this day. And that doesn't surprise me because oil blotting papers were huge back in 2009. I think we all use them, anybody within like an oily T-zone. But despite this successful launch at first, Desai initially struggled to obtain any retail partners or kind of get any investments to help grow the business. And in 2009, when she initially started to approach retailers to sell Tatcha, she was told that her brand was too niche and too exotic for the Western woman. You have to kind of think, this was before the rise of K-beauty. What was 2009? Wasn't that like Paris Hilton and shit? I can't even remember. Like, this was very different for the time. And she stated before that despite the fact that she went to Harvard Business School, had a background in finance and marketing, and had a profitable business with brand awareness and a product that was so popular, she couldn't raise any money from outside investors. No one was interested. Very, very frustrating. So eventually decided to just do it herself. She sold her engagement ring, her car, her furniture to fund the growth of Tatcha. She even had 4 different jobs to help support herself and the business while working on Tatcha out of her mum's garage, and apparently went 9 years without a salary from Tatcha while building the business. I mean, if this was me, I'd be like, oh, fuck it. Like, this is too much. 9 years without taking a salary. This wasn't just about taking a salary. Otherwise, she would have, you know, like sacked it in ages ago. She has been quoted as saying, Tatcha bought me a gift, the ability to recognize the beauty and power of the Asian heritage I had struggled to see in my youth. And you know, Tatcha really is one of those like clean beauty brands that I don't usually like the language they use, but Tatcha is really about a less is more kind of approach, which I think the grand scheme of things is a good approach to skincare and beauty in general. These minimalistic beauty rituals, holistic skincare. I do love the idea of skincare being a ritual because for us skincare enthusiasts, it kind of is. We look forward to doing our routine. And because of her own issues with her skin, she did want to avoid anything that she thought could potentially irritate people's skin further. So we have the usual clean beauty no list of no parabens, synthetic fragrances, mineral oil, and other ingredients. This is my gripe with brands like this is parabens are usually the most irritant-free preservative. There are a lot of alternative preservatives that have been shown to be more irritating than parabens. Synthetic fragrances are kind of better than natural fragrances in most cases because at least with synthetic fragrances, you can control what makes up those fragrances and avoid those known to cause a lot of allergies. Natural fragrances, often including essential oils, are very, very irritating for your skin. So this isn't really the approach that I personally like to my skincare, especially as somebody with rosacea. This irritates my skin more than not having irritating ingredients. But her focus on natural ingredients is shown in the creation of her Hadase 3 complex. Now this is a proprietary blend of 3 key ingredients: green tea, rice, and red algae. All ingredients I absolutely love individually, and they look great together. And these ingredients are the basis of the original geisha skincare rituals and are now the foundation of every Tatcha product. So it's not really her creation. She's kind of taken what geishas use in their skincare routine, put them together, and then kind of gave it a name. As I mentioned, these simple ingredients have a long history in beauty Japanese rituals and provide so many benefits for your skin. They are actually very, very beneficial, not just in skincare, but also in diet. Again, this was inspired by what was a Japanese traditional diet, being rice, seaweed, and green tea being the staples at a dinner table in Japan in the geisha times. So using this new complex, it kind of expanded their range over the next few years, introducing really their core skincare line, which we all know today and kind of are the most iconic products within Tatcha, including their rice enzyme powder, the deep brightening serum, the moisture-rich silk cream, kind of combining Japanese tradition and skincare science. By 2015, Tatcha was so well known. Celebrities, beauty influencers loved them. It was almost a status symbol if you had Tatcha products. And by 2015, they were ranked at number 21 on the list of the fastest growing private US companies in 2015. And in 2016, they capitalized on this with the launch of the water cream, Supreme, which is that lightweight oil-free moisturizer, which has no doubt become one of their most popular products. And by 2017, they landed in Sephora. That's kind of when you know you've made it as a brand, when Sephora are like, yeah, you can come in, you could be on our shelves, because you know people are interested in your brand and want your brand, making their products even more accessible and making their popularity boom. And of course, with continued growth and huge popularity come the copycats. And there are a few legal issues here. Back in 2017, Tatcha filed a lawsuit against Too Faced Cosmetics, alleging trade dress infringements. This is basically like, you're copying us kind of thing. The case, filed in the Northern District of California, centered on Tatcha's claim that Too Faced Peach Kiss Moisture Matte Longwear lipstick too closely mimicked the packaging of Tatcha's lipsticks. Tatcha arguing that it will cause confusion amongst consumers, and I'll be honest, they do look too similar. Like, it's a bit too much, you know? Like, you know, there's only so much you can do with lipstick, and there are many other brands who have this style of packaging, but I do believe, knowing Too Faced and what Too Faced are like, that they intended to do this. Tatcha eventually actually voluntarily dismissed this case for unspecified reasons, and the two companies kind of reached an out-of-court agreement. Chapter 3, Tsai steps down. So after 8 years of rapid growth, Tatcha was so popular. Everyone loved them. Everybody wanted a piece of them. And whilst previously it was hard to come by any investors were like lining up to be part of Tatcha's future. The company expected to receive retail sales of around 75 million by 2017. I hope she took a payday by then. I hope she did. So in 2017, Tatcha agreed to a deal with private equity firm Castanea Partners, who also had investments in beauty brands Drybar and First Aid Beauty at the time. But they bought around 30% of the companies. The exact details weren't really disclosed, but Tsai said that this investment really helped to grow the company's supply chain, the technology infrastructure, and increase international growth in the long term. However, unfortunately for Tsai, she wouldn't get a chance to oversee the use of these funds, as although Castanea were outwardly praising her leadership of the company, it was a completely different story behind closed doors. Janet Gerwich, who was operating partner of Castanea at the time, who joined Tatcha's board in the deal, was quoted as saying, "The product quality, I'm so impressed. Vicky is so true to it. If we talk about, do you really need to spend money to put the gold spoon on top of the package? She says, yes, I do, and I really admire that." I mean, isn't it just like a little plastic thing? I can't remember. And at the time of the deal, in a press release, Castanea said, "We look forward to working with Vicky and the team to support the company's growth." But Tsai claims that in reality, a very different conversation took place. In an interview with Cosmetic Business, she said the very first thing that happened was that I was asked to step down as CEO. She also said that one of the new partners after the deal recommended that they get a real CEO. I mean, to me, that doesn't really sound like Castanea were excited to work with her at all, or that they admired her commitment to the quality of her products. Her track record and education didn't really matter to them at all, and I'm sure it had absolutely nothing to do with her being a woman from a minority background. I'm sure it had nothing to do with that. She knew that she had done an amazing job at running her business up until this point. However, Tsai agreed to step down as CEO in early 2018. In an interview for Glamour years later, Tsai said, "I had to bring on a white male partner, her husband, in order to even get meetings with financiers, who still turned us down anyway. I had been a CEO for 8 years, our minimum growth rate was 40%, and in the 8th year it was 85%. We decided to bring in private equity for growth capital. I was told I was not worthy to lead, and I was asked to step down as CEO. I was threatened, actually. So I stepped down very quietly. I never want to be one of those people who gets in the way." Chapter 4, Acquisition by Unilever. Whatever Tsai had been doing at the company, it had clearly been working up until Castanea came in, kicked her out for a middle-aged white man. In just 8 years, Tsai had built Tatcha into one of the fastest growing and most popular skincare brands in North America. They were everywhere. And just a year and a half after getting involved, Castanea capitalized on the work Tsai had done to build up the company the way she did so quickly when Unilever came in with an offer to buy the brand. In June of 2019, Unilever acquired Tatcha for a massive $500 million, making it one of the biggest acquisitions in their history. And this acquisition was kind of part of a bigger plan for Unilever. It was part of their plan to expand its portfolio of high-end skincare brands, including huge brands like Dermalogica, Ren, Kate Somerville, amongst many others. This was a huge moment for Tsai, the founder of this company. She'd gone from working in a garage to selling the brand for $500 million. In a statement given at the time of the deal, Tsai said, when creating Tatcha, our dream was to make a brand that would live for at least 100 years. That dream can come true in our new home with Unilever. We are overjoyed to have found a parent to grow globally with and to have a purpose-driven partner to ensure we can have a positive impact in our communities as we grow. And Unilever obviously had the resources to really elevate Tatcha to a global level. But the deal wasn't without its critics. Of course, some loyal customers expressed concerns about potential changes in product formulations and business practices, because that's the worst thing, right? When somebody buys out a brand and they change all this shit up. It's like, there's a reason the brand is so popular and there's a reason you wanted the brand. Why are you changing so much? That's always a worry. There was a worry that the brand might shift focus from its core values and practices and prioritize profitability over tradition. Those who were into clean beauty were particularly worried. They were worried that Unilever, in order to sell more product, would kind of shift away from these natural ingredients and harmful chemicals kind of thing, harmful chemical-free products. But at the time, Tsai was like, the beauty brand will continue to prioritize everything that we prioritized before, if not just more so. Now they have more money, basically. And yet, nothing's really changed. It's been the same. It's, you know, everyone's fine. But one of the main concerns here was, of course, Tatcha's cruelty-free status. This happens a lot when a cruelty-free brand is bought by a larger conglomerate that has brands that do tests on animals. And it's one of those things, isn't it, where Tatcha itself is cruelty-free, but Unilever is not a cruelty-free company. They state that it does test on animals where required by law. China, the laws are changing there now. However, at the time, this would have been testy subject. Chapter 5, Charity and Awards. So despite the concerns that some people had when Unilever acquired the brand, Tatcha appears to have stuck to its principles, which keeps it so popular to this day. And as Vicky Tsai mentioned in her statement, the sale to Unilever meant that the brand could really focus on some of its philanthropic ventures, charitable ventures. In 2014, Tatcha created the Beautiful Faces, Beautiful Futures Fund. They partner with Room to Read, a global non-profit organization dedicated to promoting literacy and gender equality in education. Through Room to Read's Girls Education Program, Tatcha aims to keep girls in school and help them reach their potential. They also aim to bring diverse books to underserved communities in the United States through Room to Read's US Literacy Initiative. And as of June 2024, Beautiful Faces, Beautiful Futures Fund has helped provide over 10 million days of school to underprivileged girls around the world, mostly in Southeast Asia. And they've also helped distribute over 600,000 books throughout the US. And they've won multiple beauty industry awards and being featured in prominent magazines like Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, Allure, Allure's Best of Beauty, InStyle's Best of Beauty Buys, and the CEW's Beauty Awards. Their water cream, dewy skin cream, deep cleanse, and silk powder are all award-winning products. I would say that their water cream is like an iconic product. But as I mentioned, although Tatcha is a highly regarded brand in the beauty industry, they are not without their controversies. Chapter 6, Controversies and Criticisms. Like most any beauty brand, Tatcha has received criticism over the years for a lot of different reasons, from questions regarding ingredient transparency to scrutiny over the efficacy of their products and the accessibility of their products due to their high price point. All these criticisms are fairly common, especially for luxury beauty. When you build a brand on being all natural, clean, and it's really fucking expensive, and make bold claims about its efficacy as well, and how, you know, you link it to something like dermatitis, people are going to question the validity there. They're going to question if it actually works and if it's even worth the money. Whether any luxury product is worth the price tag is kind of like debatable. I think the products are nice. I don't love them personally, but this of course gave rise to a ton of dupes on the market. One of the most popular dupes being the Laneige Waterbank Blue Hyaluronic Cream. Very similar core ingredients, texture and finish to Tatcha's cult favorite, the water cream, but costs a lot less money. But where Tatcha's biggest controversy comes in is when we start to talk about cultural appropriation. As a brand that heavily markets itself using Japanese cultural elements, Tatcha has faced many accusations of cultural appropriation. Critics argue that the brand, while inspired by Japanese traditions, may not fully represent or give back to the culture it draws from. So for anyone who isn't actually aware of what cultural appropriation is, because I do feel like that term gets thrown around everywhere nowadays, but it does have a very particular meaning, which leads to a very particular series of events that leads to profit kind of thing. Cultural appropriation involves adopting elements of one culture by members of another culture, which can be seen as disrespectful, exploitative, especially when the originating culture is marginalized, and especially when you're profiting off that culture. And these accusations pretty much come from Tatcha placing itself as a Japanese beauty brand, with critics arguing that it commodifies Japanese culture, particularly when the brand's leadership is not predominantly Japanese. The brand's founder, Vicky Desai, as we discussed, is a US-born citizen of Taiwanese parents. Although she is Asian, she's not Japanese. And although she claims to have started the brand due to being inspired by geishas' beauty rituals, and because she wanted to share these secrets with the world and, the benefit it had for her own skin, the fact that she is not Japanese herself raises questions about the commercialization of these traditional practices, and whether or not these representations of Japanese traditional practices are fully respectful and authentic, even being oversimplified and commercialized for Western audiences. Many of Tatcha's products have names or descriptions that reference Japanese culture, with some people feeling that the brand may be cashing in that exotic appeal rather than a genuine representation of the culture. An example of this was back in 2018 with the launch of their kimono in collaboration between Tatcha and a silkwear brand Helena Quinn, which was heavily criticized. The kimono was being described as inspired by the silk robes of geisha and Japanese nobles from centuries past, and was being sold for $115. An online acquaintance of mine, Steven, who goes by kind of Steven on Instagram, back in the day called out these collaborators in an Instagram post for wrapping the kimono incorrectly in their product photos. That may not sound like anything, but when you don't understand the culture, when you're not truly part of that culture, these mistakes that don't seem like anything can take on a whole new different meaning. The way they had this wrapped, according to Steven, was only suitable in Japanese culture when dressing the dead for burial. Not exactly the kind of message you want to send with your product launch or how you want to wrap yourself up when you're about to do your skincare routine. Again, this is kind of something that, knowing what kimonos are and kind of what they represent, this is kind of something that you would think you might think about. Kimonos, they're not just a nice gown that people put on. There's real meaning behind these. Kimonos being wrapped a certain way, having different meanings, isn't really surprising if you're involved in the culture. And the portrayal of Japanese culture in Tatcha's marketing materials is seen by some as selective and potentially stereotypical representation of Japanese culture, which doesn't fully capture the diversity and richness of the culture. And what this comes down to is whether Tatcha is really respectful of Japanese tradition and is giving enough back to the culture they are inspired by, or whether they're simply exploiting that culture, which is not theirs, for financial gain, with no concern for authenticity and regardless of the damage it does to that culture. It's something to think about. It's something I thought a lot about. I don't really use the brand, but it's something I on and off think about. Many critics nowadays are even questioning whether Tatcha includes enough voices from the culture it draws inspiration from in its leadership team and product development, especially after the Unilever takeover. And this is a continuous criticism. Tatcha's had to respond to this repeatedly, time and time again, and say, we have great respect for Japanese traditions, and the founder Vicky Desai has lived in Japan and worked closely with Japanese scientists and cultural experts to develop their products. They also say that the brand themselves places a strong emphasis on education and preserving the beauty secrets of Japanese culture. And Tatcha's products will often come with a piece of literature that explains the history and significance of the ingredients used in the product, and even sometimes the rituals that they were used in, to try and educate consumers about Japanese culture. Now, Vicky herself has addressed the accusations of cultural appropriation a fair few times actually by emphasizing her deep respect and commitment to Japanese culture, and stated that her inspiration and approach to creating Tatcha was rooted in her personal experiences in Japan and her genuine admiration for the country's beauty rituals. She's also consistently highlighted that Tatcha's products are developed in collaboration with Japanese scientists based on extensive research into classical Japanese beauty traditions, emphasizing the company's mission is to share these time-honored practices with the world, always with the utmost respect and authenticity, continuing to work with Japanese cultural consultants and artisans, ensure that the brand honors and accurately represents the traditions it draws from. It does make me wonder though, why? I get her journey, I get her story, but why not your own culture? Because surely that's something that is overlooked. I feel like Japanese beauty, to be fair, not at the time, but it's very popular nowadays, along with K-beauty. I don't know. I wonder why not her own culture. Chapter 7, Desai back as CEO. Although Tatcha had received these criticisms time and time again, particularly in regards to cultural appropriation, these criticisms really peaked in the years when Tsai was no longer CEO, when she was forced to step down. But these weren't the only issues the company had during this period. That there were issues as criticisms of the brand's marketing was reaching its peak. They were blindsided, along with nearly every company, by the arrival of the COVID-19 pandemic. They had major supply chain issues, and there was a growing rise of Asians and Asian Americans being attacked on the street, which was supposedly affecting the brand's popularity. And apparently the middle-aged white man that they brought in to replace Desai as CEO wasn't doing good enough at his job dealing with these issues, because just 2 years after asking Vicky Desai to step down as CEO, the board came crawling back to ask her to return as CEO and lead the company through the pandemic. So Tsai was reinstated as CEO in January of 2021, joining a small group of CEOs who had left and later returned to the company, including Howard Schultz of Starbucks, Steve Jobs of Apple, and Bob Iger of Disney. Talking about the situation like later down the line, Tsai didn't hold back, rightfully so. In an interview regarding her return, Tsai said, "No founder comes back a second time because things went well. I finally started to realize the cumulative effects of gender and racial discrimination on my sense of self-worth and career. My background as an Asian woman is what led me to create Tatcha, which is founded on the Japanese beauty rituals that I religiously adhered to. But it also represents a challenge. In the 10 years I spent leading Tatcha, I never felt comfortable or worthy of being called a CEO. During a private equity deal, I was told I was not qualified to lead the company I had successfully helmed for nearly a decade. Not wanting to put my ego ahead of my company's success, I took their advice and stepped down. Looking back now, I realized that I let 2 middle-aged male consultants mansplain me out of the job I had done exceptionally well. 2 years later, I was asked to return as CEO and now leading my company out of COVID." Everyone loved this. The staff was so happy she was back. Fans of the brand were thrilled that she was back, with her successfully, and not surprisingly, leading the brand through the rest of the pandemic, working to restore Tatcha to its roots. I will say, skincare had a boom during the pandemic. People were spending money on skincare and self-care instead of going out, buying clothes, all that kind of stuff. But this return was always going to be a temporary one, with the aim of steadying the ship, basically, and setting the company on the right course again. And one of the leaders who she brought in herself would eventually become her replacement, but at least she got to pick who that was. So in October of 2021, Tsai brought in Mary Yi in the company. Yi was also an alumni of Harvard Business School. Prior to joining Tatcha, she spent 8 years at PlayStation, first as Senior Director of Marketing before being promoted to Senior Vice President of Global Marketing. Tsai did remain at Tatcha to, just with the transition while Yi kind of like settled into the new role, till she eventually stepped down as CEO again in May of 2022. Once again, leaving Tsai in a very strong position, this time as the second fastest growing female-led company in the US. Chapter 8: Future of the Brand. Before Tsai left, she helped plan the brand's launch here in the UK. The brand finally launching officially in May of 2022 here in the UK, I believe in Space NK. I think they're in Sephora as well. And even to this day, their growth continues to be fueled by social media. I feel like with every new generation of skincare influencers or beauty influencers that come online, they kind of discover Tatcha and then it goes viral again and again. It's one of those very few luxury skincare brands that you see people of all ages kind of investing in. And I feel like they're very hit or miss. You either love them or you don't like them at all. And of course, they have a huge range of celebrity fans, including Meghan Markle, who has openly been a fan of the brand since 2014, and even counts Tsai as a friend of hers now. They moved into the same neighborhood in California, with Tsai even appearing on the Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary. Kim Kardashian, Selena Gomez, Jennifer Aniston, Doja Cat, Jennifer Lopez, Elizabeth Olsen. To be honest, this list could go on and on and on as far as their celebrity fans. Clean beauty is always successful. I'm not saying that Tatcha are doing this, because I think there's definitely a difference between creating a brand who are rooted in tradition versus one who are using the clean label to fearmonger. But when people see clean and don't know a lot about the science of skincare, they're likely to opt for that, especially people with a huge disposable income who probably drink, like a smoothie every day. Is that a luxury thing? I don't know. The important thing is that the quality and the formulations that Tatcha fans love is still the same to this day. Tatcha say that every formula is crafted at the Tatcha Institute in Tokyo, where their scientists attempt to balance timeless Japanese ingredients with proven modern science. And so far, it seems to be working for them. I think when you go to Japan, I love Japan. Japan is my favorite country above any, even England where I live, obviously. It's hard to not become obsessed with Japanese culture and want to learn more about it every time I leave Japan. I want to know more about how the country became the way it is because I'm just so obsessed with it. Their culture, everything down to, I don't know, I just love it. I love it. Japan is one of those countries that when you go, you just want to go back and you want to be part of their culture. You want to enjoy their culture. You wish you were born there kind of thing. I get the want to spread that culture and your love for that culture. Will I ever appropriate it? No, obviously not. Tatcha are still winning awards. They won Best New Brand in the prestige category of the UK CEU in 2023 Beauty Awards. The Water Cream won Best Lightweight Moisturizer in the Stylist 2023 Best Beauty Awards, and their Violet C Brightening Serum was runner-up in the Skin Tech Wonder category for Vogue Beauty Awards. Still a loss? No, sorry. With skincare continuing to rapidly grow and skinimalism being a trending topic at the beginning of every new year, with people wanting to become more and more healthy and kind of like minimalize their life, I guess you can say, Tatcha's products are always in demand. They're always in demand and will continue to grow. Tatcha's philosophy of blending Japanese wisdom and traditional ingredients with modern science is what led to its huge success and number of fans. But whether or not this philosophy is just a fancier way of saying cultural exploitation, or whether you think they've done enough to give back to the culture they're benefiting from, I'll leave that up to you.